This is the Behavioral View. I'm Shannon Hill, and joining me is Nissa Van Etten. We're your hosts for candid conversations about applied behavior analysis. No gimmicks, just real talk, practical tips, and maybe a few laughs. Come on and join us. Let's have some fun. Hey everyone, would you like to get at CEU for this episode? Listen closely for the announcement of 3 secret words delivered throughout the episode. Take note of those words, and we'll tell you where to go to get your CEU when the show is over. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the season finale of the Behavioral View Season 4. I am Shannon Hill. I'm the editor-in-chief at CentralReach Institute, and I'm really excited to be bringing you this giant panel that we have today, where we're going to be talking about where we are at the end of 2024 and what we see coming for us in 2025 and beyond. But let's start off by introducing everybody. Nissa, you want to do your normal job of that introduction thing?
Oh, yeah, and remembering what my job is. I'm Nissa Van, and I'm the director of clinical training in CR Institute here at CentralReach.
And we have with us today, we'll start with you, Janet, because you're at the top of my screen.
Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. I am Janet Twyman. I am on the Scientific Advisory Board for CentralReach. Very proud to be. So I am an instructional designer, behavior analyst, and currently the chief learning scientist for BLAST, which is an instructional design company.
Amazing. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And we have Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Rebecca Womack. I am the CEO of Broad Consulting Solutions. I'm also a BCBA and a part-time farmer. I have a bunch of golden retriever puppies at home, so call me if you want one. And I love engaging with just different professional activities within our industry, both with ABA and in healthcare in general. So glad to be here today.
Thanks. And Star.
Hey, my name is Starlet Sharp. I am a systems change interventionist. I'm actually a cancer biologist by training. I work all over the place, but currently I'm also part of the CentralReach Science Advisory Board, and that is a fun task.
Great. Thank you. And last but not least, we have Ellie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ellie Kazemi. I am by training a behavior analyst. I'm a learning scientist. I am doing a new venture. I'm the CEO of Transform VXR, where we're working on immersive learning opportunities. And I would say, I cannot take on another puppy at all, Rebecca, because my current puppy is teaching me many lessons about time management and how to survive. Being a new mom of a puppy. So, it's a passion for me as well.
Funny how our own children and pets really can humble a behavior.
It's so true. Absolutely. So true. So true.
Well, the topic that we agreed to come on and talk about today is pretty broad. And I guess maybe we'll just kind of kick it out there with some ideas. Just for fun, since I think one of the obvious answers of what is new and interesting in behavior analysis coming up, I went ahead and asked AI, what do you think is new and interesting and on the cusp? And I asked them all. I'm like, well, all of the ones that I use on a regular basis. So it threw out about 12 to 15 things, which I do not think that we can cover all of those today. But I can throw out some of the high-level topics and see what resonates with you guys. First of all, technology and treatment. How we're going to integrate technology into ABA service delivery and training. Policy and regulations. What's on the horizon in terms of change in that kind of way. Research and methodology. And this one really, I thought, some of the people here are going to get nerdy on this one. How our measurement systems might be going to change and what kind of things we're going to be able to do with predictive analytics and large data sets and that sort. Interdisciplinary collaboration, and then professional development in all of the areas that
we have been talking about over the past couple of years in particular. So competency, diversity support, humility, all of those soft skills kinds of things, and interdisciplinary collaborations, and what kinds of ways we're going to be working more closely with what fields, and what do we need to grow in order to keep up with all of those needs. So that is a very short and concise list for you guys. I wonder if anything seems glaringly missing.
I have a thought, especially just finishing a bigger project with CASP, supporting development of the documentation templates for session notes. And I know right now there's a lot of different takes on how AI can support automation and the efficiencies around documentation. But I think just looking at healthcare, first of all, as a model, general healthcare, I think our industry will see another wave of infusing automation into documentation, not just with session notes, but also with treatment plans and care collaboration as well.
And visual analysis, I think, to add on.
Oh,
absolutely, for sure. Especially with, right now there's such a manual lift to go between the medical record with graphs and data, and then looking at the session notes and transferring that information. And that's an important process, but I think there's definitely steps that will be shortened or automated in that flow. So totally agree with you.
So how do you have it so that it's automated and we've cut out maybe unnecessary steps, but also not gotten so cookie cutter where it doesn't give you outcomes that are accurate and it's going to give the person the best information to move forward with the treatment plan?
That's such a good point. Like right now, I would say in like the last 5 years, maybe, there's been some really interesting literature around the impact on documentation on the practitioner skill set and the relationship with their patients. And what you described right there is an intersection of both of those relationships and skill sets. And I think for me, however it happens, that synthesis of information, the summary, what has to be protected at all costs is the practitioner's clinical thinking skills, their clinical judgment. Because right now we know with our profession, we're exploding into healthcare. Our certification, I think we're almost at 80,000 certificates. We're growing so fast and there's not a floor. I mean, yes, the exam serves as sort of a skill floor, but everybody has such a different background that it's hard to say where is a true baseline in terms of clinical skills. And if you get out the gate and you automate writing right away, there's a triple ripple effect on writing goals, writing treatment plans, communicating. So it's just really important to pause. I don't mean to be like a doomsdayer, but just to pause and be really protective of that skill set before you give it up in terms of exchanging it for time.
Is there a way then also to use the various and very diverse backgrounds of all those people for good? So even though they're coming at this from all different angles, are there buckets where these certain set of skills can then be harnessed to give the best information so that we're not getting rid of the best of people to get automation?
I think that's a great question. I don't have a specific answer, but what I've appreciated about the literature around documentation and AI in healthcare is the idea of upskilling and the benefit of using AI to hone the skills that you currently have, and exchanging those new skills for ones that you don't need anymore. Like if you can cut out some of that static and the busy work, I think there's great opportunity to use AI to be even more efficient with helping bridge the gap with some practitioner skills for our younger certificates in the field. And that addresses your question about the variation in skill set. So I think there's great opportunity. It's just a matter of working it out over time.
Would there be some pattern watching in that, Janet, where you can sort of see some kind of patterns and then say this group of people have these skills and therefore would be good here and so forth and so on?
So I'm going to answer because I think it's a fun question, but I'm also going to push back on the premise that AI automating things might make things too cookie cutter, because I fear that we are too cookie cutter without the AI and the technology. So just know that that's a concern in general. So, and then the whole, the massive data sets and, the machine learning and all of the predictive analytics, so all that patterning. I mean, I think those are really, really cool abilities. And with great promise comes great responsibility, because we do not want the wrong pattern, not the wrong, but we don't want disenfranchising patterns being picked up, or things that contribute to or keep the continuum of inequities going. And so, yeah, there's great promise, but there's great responsibility. Yeah.
I think a lot of this also has training implications for us that I didn't hear as the output, because for so long we've been training individuals from this position of thinking about their assessment, selecting their assessment methods. And what they're going to be doing as clinicians is about to change completely. They're going to be provided with outputs. And now they have to be strong as clinicians to be able to review such outputs and determine if what's being provided to them is correct, if there's alterations that are needed. And that really means that you have to have the experience to be able to go beyond the default that's provided. And I don't think we train for that correctly. So I think we have some new areas to think about. And I'm with Janet in that I think the most exciting aspect of artificial intelligence is, thus far when we do training, at best, where we want to scale it up, we do e-training and engage people. But really with artificial intelligence, we're able to meet people where they are and be able to shape their skills to where they can get to. So I think some changes that are likely to happen for all of us, not just in behavior analysis, but I'm eager to see what this does, is our whole model of continuing education is around duration of time. Like it's duration based. Like, I mean, that's about to completely change when you put people in simulations or immersive settings or engage them where they are, right? And we're going to become naturally a lot more competency based. We're going to actually really have to understand performance, which is exciting because that's what we're excellent as behavior analysts. So, yeah, I think a lot of our current models are going to have to be revisited too.
If that's the case, then could we also then upskill and then train people better to be able to work with certain groups and be more culturally competent with certain groups? Since we're teaching them things, can we teach them other skills that have not been taught to the general population that are missing?
I would hope so. I would definitely hope so.
One of the things, like Janet, maybe I guess we're all going to pick on you and call you out every time we have an idea. I think one of the amazing opportunities that we have here is through instructional design. Instructional design, bless you for taking that on as the passion in life, because quite honestly, it is a tedious pain in the booty. Actually do it and do it well and do it consistently. We've got a lot of places where we don't have ordered skill sets, and think about just like the RBT 40-hour RBT training, for example. How much more exciting would it be if instead of it being 40 hours of training, it was a set of competency? And if you get this one in 5 minutes, but you need 5 hours in this one, then that is your course. Whereas mine is going to look more like that. I think it's so exciting.
Yeah. Well, honestly, duration is, as Ellie brought up, like duration is not really a measure of learning. It's a measure of other things, but it's not really a measure of learning. And so, yeah, so one thing like instructional design, I think is fascinating. And think of it, it really is contingency arrangement or contingency engineering, or it's repertoire. Like you're an architect of repertoires, because that's what you're doing. You're building repertoires. So like Star said, we have to kind of figure out what it is is going to make people great at what they do, great at who they are. What is it that we can do to make people better? Not make people, help them be better. But then I 100% agree with Ellie that like, this is an exciting time because actually historically we could assess and meet people where they are and then kind of give them this maybe branching teaching scenario and all of this, and you have one of 3 choices, you go down one of 7 paths. And now it's unlimited. You could have conversational AI and just have a conversation with AI, knowing the goal is teaching you, like in Ellie's Forte, difficult conversations, right? And it could be free form, and you're not forced down a certain path, and you bring your own histories, and then it begins to shape, or it becomes influenced by your history. And I think those possibilities it's a contingency matrix, and it's what we do. So I think it's super exciting.
Are you guys scared of anything? There's the obvious, right? So I don't want to just rehash. We talked about it all along, but this group of people who are very intimately tied in with this technology, what scares you guys?
Concentrated power in a few hands.
Yep. That's simple. Yep.
I think for me, it's validation and checking, going back to Star's original question in like the efficiencies. We hear a lot, the human in the loop, making sure, one, on the back end, that there is a lot of validation and testing from subject matter experts. But then on the front end, if you are reviewing the outputs, you're actually reviewing them, that you are, to Ellie's point, really, it checks your level of understanding of the content. So if you took the output and, you can use it in any variety, but I also work at the university level, and you just submit that output. I've seen a number of submissions come through that were completely erroneous because the student just took the output and said, okay, that was my work.
Yeah.
And that is a problem because there's a level of understanding and expertise you have to review the output and say, this was completely wrong. Not only did I misinterpret the question of the assignment, but I didn't even go back and let whatever tool I used know that was an actual incorrect response.
That is my biggest fear, is on the training end, people who are in university programs using ChatGPT to get all of the answers. And if they do become, and I guess this is a good question, if they become really good editors of what the ChatGPTs produce for this essay question that I am giving them as a professor, and they're able to take that and not do what you just said. They're able to take that and shape it and make it actually address the right question. I need to be alarmed that that's how they do that or not. I go both ways with that. Is it the way that we're going to all be doing everything in the future and nobody's going to have anything at the tip of their fingers anymore? Tip of their tongue.
I'm in that, Tim.
Everybody has to be minding the store. I mean, we keep letting the machines run all over the place. Because I think we have to think of these things as tools. And so if we're going to use the manure shovel cannot use you. So we got to keep things in the right order.
Yeah.
And you get the manure all over you.
True. Although I think you're asking exactly the question we need to work out for educators, right? Like, when we're doing things as I learn, or do I become outcome-based skill? What's the future skill for this one? Future skill needed by the work profession. And when I think about the future skill needed, it's not even future, it's now. It's so intelligently developed material. So if they know how to edit, identify correct information, and really bring it to an accurate space so that it is truly answering the questions you're asking, I'd say they're on it. That's exactly what we need. But I think that these are the challenges. Is the question is, will that now change the nature of your question a little bit, as in your pedagogy, so that we can bring them closer to what the workforce is going to need from them to be excellent clinicians.
I think also what I'm hearing, I think that's a great response, Ellie. And what I'm hearing and what you guys are saying brings to mind the fact my greatest concern is an inadequate safeguarding process, or, the users assuming that AI is infallible. And even to the point where it's being used by practitioners without forethought about a risk-benefit analysis. There's no really ethical principles or guidelines that, right now I'm currently working with CAST to create AI guidelines for organizations, but there's nothing established in healthcare when there's things that are iterative, but there's nothing that is set yet that are guardrails. And there's a bill that I think is going to be socialized about AI in general. It's not specific to healthcare. That'll move through Congress, but there's so much work to be done. And so in the meantime, just making sure that folks are pausing before they proceed and assuming AI is correct, that they've assessed all stakeholder impacts. So not just the families or the organization, but do the payers know? Like, do the payers care that maybe 85% of this treatment plan was automated by AI? And who knows if it's right? Like, to all the questions that you have. So I think I'm more of a hesitant, like, let's just wait and slow our roll before we dodge ahead and get ahead of ourselves, trusting something that hasn't maybe fully been fleshed out yet.
All right, hang on. Let me do a secret word for our CEU seekers, because otherwise they will be mad at me. Okay, so I think a word I just heard was roll. 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 Secret word number 1. And I'm sorry for speaking over you, Star. Go ahead and say that again, please.
I was just going to say that policy often moves very slowly, and it's going to move. It always moves even slower than normal when you're at a turn or change of administration, which we're about to be now. So the thing is, the faster way to see some of these things implicated are policies or guardrails and guidelines that are made within professional societies that say, we are holding our group up to this particular standard. If you're going to be an RBT or BCBA or whatever, this is what we have decided are going to be the standards in our field. Because if you with the entire United States to involve, then get ready for exactly what you said, a slow moving, and all the cattle will be out of the barn before this even gets to them. Right.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that concerns me is an erroneous assumption about the checking. So I've talked about this case a few times, but I'll give it here as an illustration. In 2023, there was a case where a young man had a congenital heart defect. He went to a doctor. The doctor screened him, used an AI device, and the output was, you're good to go. Unfortunately, the gentleman died a few weeks later. So when this case went to court, the judge settled the case, meaning that the plaintiffs didn't have enough evidence to bring it to trial. And so he settled in part because the state's laws reflected that the software was not considered a medical professional, therefore could not be held responsible for the death of the young man. And the point in sharing this is that the first, I guess one of the errors was that the doctor didn't check the output before he handed it off and said, you're good to go. And when we think about that application with session notes, with treatment hour recommendations, with goal formulation, I've read treatment plans before when, as a consultant, where I've asked about the goals. Where did these come from? Our goal bank. Where's the evidence in the baseline assessment that you actually assess these skills? There is none. So if there's automation there, who's doing the checking to verify that it actually is matching and it's socially significant and meaningful? But the other piece is this legal kind of overarching thread about liability. This is an extreme example because unfortunately a young man died, but the software is not held accountable. So who's accountable for the ill effects of maybe AI that didn't go as planned, implemented by behavior analysts, that caused maybe a child to stay in care longer than necessary or exit earlier? I think there's just a lot to think about that hasn't yet been fully, I guess, worked out. And the train is moving. So
where was the second opinion? He didn't work in the hospital alone. He asked coworkers. Other people can look when we make this diagnosis and prognosis and decisions. So to just decide that the machine is going to be the final word, that's not good critical thinking skills. That's not good analysis. He didn't use all the data. So while it's not liable, I can see that the AI is definitely not liable. He used it and that was his tool. So he's liable for this mistake. If my car rides into your fence and I'm not in it and it rolls away, I'm still liable with my car. And so the case has been settled. But the thing is, I think we need to think about that. Do you really want the machine to have the final say? Wouldn't you want some eyes that have had lots of different case work and have seen lots of different nuances to be more of a deciding factor than just the large language inputting systems?
I love that question. I had it in the back of my, I was going to pull
what are we going to do? But I was going to push it even further, Star, and say,
this is a huge ethical thing, ethical conundrum for us. And maybe it's not even conundrum isn't the right word, but it's something we have to deal with on both sides of that. What are we going to do if it's better than us at decision making? Then what happens to the field of ABA?
Oh, that's a turn of events. I'm not sure I was ready to. I was still thinking about, what you're speaking about regarding the responsibility of the individual. I think these are excellent reasons to get together and think about how do we safeguard for those, right? So when I think about automation for pilots, they have begun to create lots of wonderful ways to prompt things move to manual systems periodically, so the pilot has to stay on their toes. And I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I actually backed my Tesla right into a wall at my nearby Trader Joe's. And I backed it up into the wall because the backup camera on Tesla, which is the first time I've ever had this type of car. I didn't have backup cameras. I'm really used to automated. I even had a shift car before. So to upgrade to a completely computerized system has been actually changed for me on the road. But I backed up into the wall because it predicted that it wasn't there. And when I checked on my rear view mirror on the side, the other side, there was no wall. The wall began right exactly where I was. So the computer predicted, I confirmed that prediction in a lazy way, meaning I've gotten so used to it being correct that I did a very quick check. And not the thorough check I usually would do, the full turnaround. And I backed into a wall, right? And so now who's responsible? I'd like to say Tesla is, but I doubt that they'll take it.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I think about now, what has that done is it's resulted in a lot of checking and rechecking, which we want, right? There's a purpose for automation. It is to relieve the human cognition and time load. So we have to identify a way to help, but also continue to have the human be in charge. And what I worry about is getting that to a space where everything gets to rechecked and checked. Then it kind of goes away from what we've gained as a tool, right? It's to support and help us.
So, I think one of the things I wanted to just say is that I think it's a fascinating question. And an article I read recently did address that question to a bunch of healthcare professionals. I believe they were general practitioners. And they asked, what would your thoughts be if AI perfected decision making? Like, where is the place of the human? And there was a subset that said that then AI should be driving healthcare, that the human should step out because the priority is accuracy in treatment. Now, the spectrum was wide. And so there were some that said nothing with AI. It doesn't matter. We are still humans that should be running everything and we don't need it, period. But then there was this middle that talked about the human in services like we're, sharing now. And so I don't foresee that ever happening simply because I think if you think about the heart of what we're doing, we're here to help and serve people as people, not as machines. And so that changes the dynamic or I guess the function and mission of our science if we're totally absent. Even if it can do it better, it's not the same thing without the humans, in my opinion.
I agree. And like just to even go back to that study, I say, sure, over-reliance on technology has been problematic since technology came about. First, it was, when some of us were younger, it was over-reliance on calculators, right? You wouldn't be able to learn to do math. And yes, my grocery store clerk still can't do math. Right. But the whole thing, like with there's been so many studies, there's a lot of data out there about how AI is making better clinical decisions. And even a couple of studies about even in the healthcare profession having a better bedside manner, quote unquote, a couple studies around that. But I think when that outcome of like the goal of treatment is accuracy, and so therefore we should use AI, I personally don't agree with that. I don't think accuracy is the single sole goal of diagnosis or treatment or something like that. And I do think there's a compassionate care component that humans bring. And I think there's, all of these other pieces. But to go back to Shannon's original question, if AI gets better at analyzing single case graphs and determining what type of intervention might be needed, or I don't know, name anything. If these large language model technologies get better at it than a behavior analyst, then I say use the tool and use the human to get us better at something else. There's always going to be a new frontier. There's always something else we have to get better at. So if we can do it, if we can be freed up to do it, let's do it.
I would have one question, and that is tools often get better, but also it's the inputs that we have to think about, right? So in the medical model that we're thinking about, that may work well for majority population and the majority problem. If you have an indigenous issue and the indigenous population in the United States is very small, then how does work for those people? Because that's not an input they have very often. Specific problem with less-handed Filipinos that live in Orange County. Let's just say that particular group. Are there enough give that particular group a good response, or are we now using tools that now so I worry about those people that are marginalized. Are we further marginalizing them? Are we helping them also to get better answers as well?
So again, Star, I think kind of sorry, you guys. One best. But so that left-handed Filipino in Orange County, even his general care practitioner that he sees face to face, may or may not have a lot of data, because there may be a Filipino community, not all of them left-handed in Orange County, so there may be some more data. But that's the point. If some of these other things can be taken care of well, can we then try to get the data on the edge conditions? It's always about getting more knowledge, and so that we can serve more people, so that we can be better with more people. So I wouldn't think that, I wouldn't want to use it to discount any of those populations. And we should be very clear about, this training data set was on middle-aged white males, right? And so things are going to be different.
Well,
Let's understand what those differences are.
somebody mentioned earlier that one of the fears is consolidation of power into a few hands. What are we going to do? We have this tool that could go either way with that, right? That it could really bring equity to healthcare services, or it could get taken over by a certain degree of people who have a majority cause in mind, and those resources don't get allocated in a way to actually prepare us for more equitable services. What do you guys think that we need to do to advocate to prevent it from going in the wrong direction?
I think one of the things is there needs to be sort of a level setting around the expectation of transparency. Right now, it doesn't seem like there is a standard requirement for stakeholders who want to use AI to get visibility into the inner workings of the bias in the data, whether data set is structured or unstructured, what that means in terms of outputs, how often there's auditings that occur to ensure it's functioning as intended. I think at least as a person who wants to use the data or the product, they're probably assuming all of that is accounted for, right? Or they may not have the knowledge to say, hey, are these questions I should be asking? So I think the first step is requiring some level of transparency that's not going to disadvantage any one company from being profitable, but still allows their users to be well equipped with risks and benefits of engaging with the technology.
Do you guys think that we're headed towards things like FDA approval being required since it's a healthcare tool? How deep is this going to go?
I think it could. I don't see it not being possible. I mean, there's devices out there, software is medical devices that require it. I think it just depends on how it could be used and maybe to what extent it impacts a human's life.
Mm-hmm. It's just, I think about, I guess my frame of reference is a lot to do with Google and how much we've become so reliant on it without understanding how it works on the back end. And when they disclose the way that you're describing, Rebecca, we're not reading that because I can't see it. For one thing, that text is way too small. It's way too long. And I would need an AI to summarize it for me to tell me what it was. It's really hard.
Yeah. I don't know that. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think Rebecca's exactly right. One of the major first steps is transparency. And yeah, I think you're right, Shannon. We all don't have to understand it, but certain watchdog groups do. We can get, there has to be some people that, understand like the biases that get built into the training data or the algorithms, or whether or not it's built on synthetic data or whatever, whatever these pieces are, that understand that. Because right now, the model that's probably most frequently used, is OpenAI's various sets of models, and they're not transparent at all about how their models.
OpenAI is not transparent.
Also, there have to be some type ownership and liability, right? Someone has to be responsible and accountable. When you have FDA devices like pacemakers, things like that, plastic surgery implants, if they are dysfunctional, there is someone to go back to. So it can't just be something didn't work and oh well. So that we have to think about, there have to be some kind of accountability structures and responsibility and legal frameworks around these things as well.
So at the bottom of every conversation now, it says, I might be making this up. You better check that. That's with a loophole. But it's going to come back on the practitioner, or is there going to be,
That'll sound like those drug commercials. We don't know, they go on
all the things that could happen. Well,
the things
where light fall off and you could die. Yeah. You need to check the box.
Almost, I think of it as a DocuSign, right? You open up your DocuSign, it highlights 4 areas. Most of the time, we understand what we're being sent to DocuSign for, and that's about it. But you're not reading. You're just going through the yellow areas and adding your initials. There's got to be a level of, review from on both sides, the developers and the users, in saying, here's where you can initial, but please, let me highlight bold and orient you towards what this indication implicates for you when you sign and use this tool.
What do you guys think is the comparison? What's the standard? Because obviously, when new technology is involved, any mistakes that get made are going to be, that's going to be national news. It's going to be international news. And do we have enough information about the accuracy and the correct outputs that human beings are making right now to be? And is that something that we should be using as a comparative model? Do we want to do that, or should there be a different standard since it is technology?
I mean, I think that's the exciting part, right? Is that there is potential for increasing equity. Currently, we're learning a lot about our intake systems, recruitment systems, interview systems, and people are like, AI is biased. And it's like, no. The data we gave AI, the structures we provided have been biased, and it's highlighting our bias. So, we're able to now adjust for and recognize that we have had these problems as a part of our infrastructure. So it has the potential to create equity. I think in the right hands with the right infrastructure and architect. I think the question is who are the architects of it, and can we make sure that there is shared governance of that architecture so that we do not allow capitalism alone to make those decisions.
I think another key part of that, I so agree with what you're saying, Ellie, is also expectation management. Who's responsible for what? While AI certainly has its place in terms of providing precision and efficiencies and automation, the obligation and the onus of responsibility still lies on the behavior analyst designing and directing treatment, not the software. The software can predict or lay out a pathway, and then still going back and not staying true to the basics, checking in with the family and saying like, hey, is this what you were hoping for? Not assuming that because you're using AI, it's better than what you could have ever done on your own.
Yeah. I need to do another secret word really quickly. How about I get really super creative and say AI? Secret word number 2 is AI. It is spelled AI. Okay.
I think I'd be curious to hear from everyone on this call, how we can manage expectations to grow inspiration. I think my worry would be that if we are too on the side of conservative and fear of the system, right, that we could fall behind as a profession, but also not really architect and navigate and really drive what's coming. And if we are too excited, we also have lots of individuals who have done some of this work outside of us and are coming and they don't quite understand behavior analysis, right? They're trying to understand it through just bringing their technologies to what we do. If we're too excited, we could really see fast development without our input toward what we're looking for. I'd be curious to hear how you all think we can manage that, because that's here, that's upon us,
I definitely have thoughts about that. So to me, it's a matter of like a spectrum from known to unknown. So it's so exciting to me to see AI be leveraged for things that are like so tedious and difficult. One example is scheduling software, where AI can go in and take someone's availability and match it across a caseload and plot out how much time it will take them to get to whatever home if they're, doing home services, or countercorrect for someone calling in sick last minute, populate a list of who's available. Like that is something my brain could barely do with an Excel sheet, much less on the spot, right? But then as you start to move down the list of intersection with our industry and you get into things that maybe aren't as precise, like what the outcome difference is between 20 hours and 25 hours and an authorization, and what the rationale is for asking for those extra 5, or why 5 are not needed this month. I don't think every behavior analyst can precisely say why that is. Ideally, they should be. But if we haven't really landed on clearly defining some of those things that are still emerging in the literature or maybe aren't as thoroughly taught in school, I think that's where it can kind of get a little bit more difficult to accurately and properly and safely leverage AI.
I always envision using, and I think many of us have heard this low impact, low risk, high impact, high risk kind of matrix that has been discussed here at CentralReach, and just kind of playing and not playing, but like working in that low impact, low risk, or the crawl bubble that we talk about, where, let's socialize and begin to beta and proof of concept with customers, like this very low impact, low risk tool. Right. Very similar to what Rebecca is bringing up, that scheduling component. That's not a really big impact to clients and learners and practitioners. It actually might really save time and efficiency. But when we get to that intersection that Rebecca is talking about, where it impacts the learner and the clinician and the requirement of skills and training, that is, it requires a ton of testing and proof of concept and conversations and back end analysis and understanding and literature review. Those are things that need to be done in a very safe space and really not even socialized until you've had validation and advisory on that. So that low impact, low risk is the perfect place to start. And as you're doing that, starting to educate the field. I think that the more education our field of clinicians can be provided training, the better they'll understand these are accessible to you. But, and I've seen a ton of CEUs and trainings on just open AI and ChatGPT for writing treatment plans. And I've even seen recommendations of de-identify everything, but you can have it write a treatment plan for you, which makes me very nervous. And, even reading social media where people are like, oh my gosh, I've used this tool. Make sure no learner information is in there, but you can run it right through. And that scares me because that is one open source tool that is going to be, again, high risk, high impact. And I've seen some conversations of set your schedule through with like your block scheduling time and just name it person A, person B, and client A and B. And that is a little bit low risk, low impact. So I think there's a lot of that level of software conversation and technology where they need to be in those matrices. And then I think there's a level of training that our field needs to understand that there's a high risk if you're going to be running your treatment plans through ChatGPT?
I respect both of those perspectives, and I think they're a similar perspective. And Rebecca even at the beginning talked about there's like the spectrum or continuum. And I'm old enough, like I'm old to have seen behavior analysis miss a lot of boats. You know, there's been a lot of cutting edge technologies. There's just been a lot of changes that we could, the list is endless, that we could have been at the forefront of. Gaming technology, education, yeah, it just goes on and on and on. And we haven't. And so I use some large language model, some natural language processing tool every day, multiple times a day. And I have recently, it's been great at helping me take care of the mundane tasks. I actually don't use it for that as much as I probably could. But where it's really helped me blossom and grow is I have actual intellectual conversations with this tool. And it's a tool, as Star keeps saying, and it's not a person. Don't answer it before I said it's a tool. But I can think about, I'm thinking about a learning strategy problem. And is there anything from the biometric literature that might help me think about this? Help me, how can I think about this in a different way? It helps me stretch my, how I look at the world. And then it actually makes me more creative in how I apply things. Now, granted, that comes with a foundation. And part of what we keep talking about is that the foundation isn't strong enough across our field. And so, we absolutely have to build that foundation. But don't short sight all the other things that the high risk, high reward could be doing. And
I have to say, I've usually try to err on the side of including all the people and making sure that no one is disenfranchised. But I am with Janet's thought on this. I am a big gambler on science. And the thing is, I believe in high risk, high reward in this case because it's going to happen. So get on the bus and find out where it's going to be sitting there. The bus is leaving no matter what. And so you find yourself sitting there. You're either going to drive the bus or you're going to be drugged by the bus. But the decision is yours, but the bus is leaving. And I think that it's important to get out there and stretch and push. But I think she said exactly the words. The foundation is weak. So what can we do to fortify and strengthen the foundation, the ethics, and all the other things that we've discussed prior to now so that it can support moving ahead quickly with these? If there are proper guardrails up, then you let people drive as fast as they want. There are roads where there are no speed limits. But the thing is, there are usually some guardrails. When they're not guardrails, you should slow down because you don't want to tip off the side. You see all that still people just flying off the side. You want to be in the water, but here, they're going too fast over there. They're going to pass the guardrails and say, go as fast as you can. Don't go beyond these guardrails. I think that makes sense. And I think, again, those things have to be set up within our professional societies and within our professional groups to say, we as behavioral people, we as BCBAs, and we as this particular group say, we're not going beyond this. We find that to be unethical behavior. And once we set the guardrails, then go forward and let's see where it goes. Unless you get started, you can't make the proper corrections. That's how this Tesla thing works, right? That thing runs off the road and crashes all the time. And then they just go pick up the pieces, put it back together, and let's see how we can fix it for next time. But if you never let it go, you don't even know where it's going to end up. You can't make any corrections. That's all with this dissertation writing. What's not on the paper.
That's right.
Exactly.
You have to write it, and then you can edit it. If it's blank, there's no editing.
You tried? Is that what you're telling us? You really tried? Oh, okay. So our third secret word today then is going to be edit, EDIT. And since we did not do a question of the day, let's do a roundup of the day because I'm hearing this theme of the weak foundation. So I'm giving you one token and you ask the vote for one thing that we need to put our energy into researching to firm up our foundation or something that we need to be teaching that we're not teaching right now in behavior analytic training programs to prepare for this.
Okay.
shift.
Okay. Alternative methods for measuring the repertoires of individuals, especially behavior analysts.
Ooh. Can we do a whole episode on that?
As long as everybody on this one is on it.
I mean, maybe next year we just do this panel over and over and over again. All right.
I love that. I absolutely love that. She took it and worded it better. I love it.
Is that what you're voting for as well, Ellie?
Oh, 100%. I think we need to think about how people are learning differently. The outcomes of, what do we consider excellent clinicians? I think this is an excellent time for us to ask ourselves those questions and work backward toward what we're training.
My answer is going to be in light of the fact that currently 80% of certificates go to work with people with autism. And so I would say one thing that I think they need to learn is how to be a healthcare provider.
I would say, I think that people need to broaden their thoughts and minds and get outside of their own siloed discipline and be willing to pick up, train, and learn something from other areas. Other areas many times are ahead or behind in different factions of the work. And so, by translating methods sometimes from other areas, we solve some of our problems.
I think I split my token and changed it for 2 quarters.
Want to learn me once bucket.
I think there's a level of research that needs to be, and I don't want to say research that impacts a learner that hasn't been safeguarded, but we have large amounts of data sets, and there's got to be a way to look into that data and understand data for the individuals who have received behavior analytic services. So I think in that capacity, looking to the data, pulling the data and understanding it. But then I'm in agreement that there's a training disparity in our field and in our practitioners with or without AI. But as we move towards technology and AI, it needs to be incorporated safely. There needs to be a level of you can't just use it, but you've got to use it with some understanding of what the outcome and output is of that tool.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to add just very briefly that I think if we look at other fields like STAR is saying, we're going to learn a lot about what's happening as to what they're seeing missing. My passion, my entire focus has become improving people's relationship intelligence for a reason. I think that that's going to be key in working with AI and being good practitioners. It's something we're not currently teaching and doing a good job with. We just hope experience alone will build.
Well, I knew this was going to happen, that this was going to go really fast. We weren't going to be able to touch on everything. No way. But you guys it's funny how so many of the other topics that were kind of in my mind got touched on with a conversation about this one thing, right? It's really kind of got fingers in getting into all of the different areas of growth that we've been talking about for some time now in ABA. So I want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing your thoughts. This has been a lot of fun. I do have a lot of deep dives ideas, so you may hear from me again, every single one of you. But until then, I'm hoping that everybody has a wonderful holiday season and a happy kickoff to 2025. And we're going to go and we're going to do some great things.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in on the Behavioral View. We'll see you next year.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Very good to see all of you. But
Thanks for watching this episode of the Behavioral View.